Hi everybody. So this is a lead-up video to the one I did previously on how the green climate change agenda is going to contribute to the coming recession. Now this is about why renewables are not actually as energy efficient as people may think they are. They're not that environmentally friendly as people think they are, and there's two reasons I see for this. Coming from an electrical engineering background, there's only I've been taught, and I've understood this for a long time, that there's only transfer of energy. There is no free energy. There's only transfer from one form of energy to another. In terms of power generation for coal, you burn coal, you boil water, you run that steam through a turbine, and that spins, and that goes to a generator, and that gives us the electricity. And for renewables, it's a bit more complicated. And another thing in terms of energy transfer, the more complicated it is usually more power loss. Now, power loss is, the loss of energy from transfer. So, electricity that goes through power lines, that gets transferred to transformers, that all has a loss factor. That's not the technical term for it, but I'm just trying to keep it as simple as possible. Now, in terms of fossil fuel power generation, there's less places for energy to be lost. For one, there's no inverting from AC to DC like solar panels would have. There's no batteries involved. It's a more efficient system because the renewable energy is a much more complicated system. For one, there's increased amount of mining for special rare earths that we wouldn't usually have. Whereas for fossil fuels, they just need a little bit of copper, they need some steel to build the infrastructure, and they need coal. Whereas for renewables, you need all these rare earths for the solar panels, you need special minerals and very, very environmentally unfriendly minerals to create batteries. Batteries are extremely bad for the environment, and then you have the problem of recycling the batteries every 8 years and the solar panels every 15, 20 years or so. So in that sense, it's quite unfriendly to the environment. For one, there needs to be an extreme amount of manufacturing to be done to create these solar panels. Then you need the same effort to recycle them. Then you have all the power loss from the solar panel to the inverter, from the inverter to the grid, and so forth. And in terms of output of CO2, we're actually seeing more output of CO2 now because of the increased manufacturing, transportation, and mining that's taking place to get all these minerals to get them ready to make all these solar panels. And you might say, yeah, but all these minerals and all this CO2 that we're having now, it's going to offset all the power that we're going to be making in the future that we're not going to need coal for. Well, kind of. You're not going to be able to get away from coal completely because, A, if you look at the generation and manufacture and mining of renewable minerals needed and manufacturing of the renewables themselves, for copper is a huge expense, especially for wind turbines. It's amazing how much copper they need, and we don't really have that much copper to service the world. Now, to do all this manufacturing and to build the solar panels, mine all the minerals, and create the wind turbines, you need fossil fuel power. It's all manufactured in China, and China's primary source of power is fossil fuels. You can't power heavy industry with renewables. Renewables can't make themselves. Same way homosexuals can't procreate themselves. You need fossil fuel power to manufacture them, so you can't get away from them. You can slightly reduce it, but here's the catch-22, like I was saying before, it's only a transfer of energy. So the amount of energy that you transfer from here to here is what you're going to get out with a bit of loss in the middle, which is the power factor loss. Or I can't remember that's the exact name, but anyway, so the amount of energy that we're going to get from solar panels when they're not going to be producing emissions, those emissions are going to have to be made prior to the manufacturer, to their point of service. So during the manufacturing process, we will emit all the CO2 that the solar panels, for example, aren't going to emit during their life cycle. So it'll actually be more in the early phase, and then we'll have nothing. But in the end, it's just a transfer of energy, and CO2 is a byproduct of that transfer of energy. So you can't get away from it. You can't have free power. And the way that the renewable energy is marketed is, oh look, steam going out of a pipe, bad. Look, our solar panels, there's no steam, it's clean, it's good. They don't show you all the mining, they don't show you the manufacturing process, they don't show you all the emissions, the extra emissions that were required from those coal-fired power stations to simply produce the renewable infrastructure, to manufacture, to melt down the copper, to manufacture the solar panels, the PE cells, and all those kind of things. And unfortunately, people have fallen for it. Everyone thinks they're an expert these days. It's not that simple. It's not. And I can see that solar and renewables are going to be more environmentally damaging because we have batteries being produced. Batteries are not good for us. They're not good for in the environment. If you look back long enough, there were campaigns saying to recycle your batteries and showing how bad they were for the environment. So it's a bad process, okay? And we're only having more CO2 emissions now because everyone's so worked up about renewables. And why is this happening, you might ask? Why is it happening? Well, because the people who have the technology have to come up with a marketing pitch to sell their renewables. It's like no other business. They come up with a marketing pitch and they pitch it and they give it to the government. They're getting all these subsidies now to make themselves more competitive with fossil fuels, and the recent rise in fossil fuel prices has done them a favour in that regard. But at the end, it's just more of the same. It's just more of the same. More mining, more manufacturing, more exploitation of our natural resources to get these renewables happening. And it's all because people's greed. No one wants to lessen their power consumption. That's all it is. If we, as a society, were to focus more on lessening our consumption, being more self-sufficient, less transportation, if everyone were to do that, you could maybe have an impact on the climate. But the reality is that the more people want, and we live in a consumerist society, and people always want more, and they're always encouraged to want more because it drives business. So that's the downside of this whole renewable agenda. It's not what it's being portrayed to be. It's simply a marketing pitch, and everyone's bought it hook, line, and sinker. It's not fossil fuels that are going to be impacting the environment. It's necessarily people's desire to consume more, to have better lifestyles, to have more things, to have more bits, bobs, and gadgets, more things that are produced in China and overseas in these third world countries that use a lot of fossil fuels. So the only really way to tackle the climate change is to reduce consumption and to be happier with less. But unfortunately, we can't have that because we've got several generations now that have only known progress, that have only known comfort, and who will not be willing to live a more simple lifestyle, a more rural lifestyle, a more self-sufficient lifestyle, where we grow our own food. Every household has a little home garden, so we don't have to buy pre-packaged meals from the shops. Those pre-packaged meals, all those plastics, all that stuff you see, all that ink put on the packaging, that all has contributed to the CO2 emissions. So it's a very, very complicated process, and not a lot of people want to give it thought. So I encourage you all to think, not give in to this green agenda, because it is going to be more damaging to the environment. It's just more CO2 emissions. So take care and peace out.